I'm recommending here an album that I wonder if anyone everywhere can and would enjoy. Select music snobs aware of its acclaim and popularity need not apply. Little Simz, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert from 2021. Any refusal to accept UK hip hop aside, Little Simz' fourth full-length album is the most exciting, consistent, and triumphant hip hop, R&B, soul, art pop album release in what feels like quite some time. Not that absolutely nothing has come along, although I can think of a great many classic or supposed classic albums from the late 2000s until, well, the early 2020s, which were depressing in an attempt at being poignant, rather than an epic which rejuvenates one's faith in the format as a medium for recorded music. It reminds myself of the attempts in the 2000s to release the ultimate perfect album, an acclaimed CD which gets it totally right. The College Dropout, Food, or In Rainbows, Merry River Post Pavilion / Strawberry Jam, or Demon Days, or even those 2000s Jizza albums, like them or not, they clearly tried to replicate the majesty of a 1990s classic like Liquid Swords, or 36 Chambers. It seems as though the concept of the album gradually faded in the 2000s into that 2010s ethereal object. It was on phones or computers, iTunes and or Spotify. You could play it at social gatherings to posture and pretend, because that's all there is to do there until you successfully manage to get into someone's bed. In the 2000s, the concept of a great album was still synonymous with great CD. The concept of the great album in the 2010s devolved into great collection of validating signals for social settings. We're really deep in strumming that we've all heard before. Let's get trash, let's get fucked up. The adults think auto-tune is abrasive, and it makes us feel like we're coming together in this generational moment because of social media avatars. We don't know what's real anymore, there is no real. We were just babies in the 80s. Those four genres got stale pretty quickly, actually almost immediately. Little Simz has me recall how exciting, entertaining, and fun albums, brilliant CDs in the 2000s could be, items which could ensure entertainment in social settings, at home alone, going for a drive, or newly at that time, and this is important, as MP3s on the iPod. Younger people don't know what that is. MP3s on the iPod didn't appear to depreciate the concept of the great CD, or the great album in general, as albums had been enjoyed as cassettes and 8-tracks on the go with Walkmans for some 2 or so decades now. But the streaming, YouTube, Spotify era kind of did. In the social media age, everything became reduced to a social signal. Your approval could be quantified now, so it seemed, thanks to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. There was nothing that these coming-of-age 98% chimpanzees could do but only see existence via approval on social media. In this sense, reality, the truth, dignity, and honesty, living for one's own sake, doesn't exist anymore. Every single individual has the opportunity to become a hollow social climber, a psychological class equality in some ways. Everyone gets to experience the psychopathy of the bourgeoisie. Little Simz' album reminds me of when an album made one excited about the real world, not about how it could enhance one's social media profile. We could discuss the sonic genius, the production whiz, the luscious structures which guide one through this gorgeous labyrinth. A modern-day Lamb Lies Down on Broadway for a newer generation, and without Peter Gabriel resorting to playing pretend a Puerto Rican youth. When Little Simz plays pretend, it is when she is reciting the story of her cousin from his perspective, a youth who survived having been stabbed during his adolescence. She utilizes her imagination to further illustrate more of our reality, someone else's reality. When she attempts to paint her cousin's story, she learns more of what they may have gone through, as she herself demonstrates throughout the album of herself and her art across her art in general, rather than a fictional life as Gabriel had and continued to do via the short story protagonist of his second solo LP, for example. Simz didn't have the privilege of a leisure class imagination, surrealist literature, and fairy tale rococo. Simz experienced a life wherein the resultant art is not the product of playful curiosity, but determined therapy. Simz' story is vital to the experience of this album. It is not Simz assigned producers, her enriching collaborators, which ensures my magnetism toward this album, but the expressed data of Sim's soul. Her transparency is empowering. She speaks and conjures people you've known, terrified. There is no known, defined, exact frequency which measures how much vulnerability one can expose before anticipating rejection. It makes one reflect on their own honesty and whether one's relationships have been based on an expectation of oneself and another person rather than the honest chain of events which moulded both separately. What could be rudely passed over as an example of a unique, distinct experience, insular and culturally subcategorized, couldn't be more of a universal experience of emotion. I suspect that this album's finesse and care is a byproduct of a commercial and critical breakthrough sophomore, which sought to address the artist's insecurities or potential misgivings of that release, 2019's Grey Area, and compose an indisputable classic to match it, to prove to herself she is capable of composing a sonic odyssey comparable to the albums which she would have studied fastidiously in her formative life. If you think this British-born woman of Nigerian parentage, spitting rhymes and encouraging empowerment and the triumph in one's personal narrative is too specific and adhering to a subgenre of life which is not speaking to you, different to you, not for you, irrelevant to you, you might be shocked to find that, just maybe, an experience of the universe which is unique and totally distinct, expressing emotions so lucid and familiar to yourself, despite being so unique and entirely its own, is so powerfully and inescapably universal. Sometimes your thoughts, or the thoughts and feelings of a remembered loved one, might begin to emanate from the speakers, though it is still the voice of Little Simz, a Gaian emotional medium. Could it be that in the story of Little Simz, in that particular narrative, we learn a universal human experience and a window into the one soul which combines us all? I have felt that way, absolutely, yes. I have to admit, I was less enthusiastic about 2019's Grey Area, which preceded this release, and 2022's No Thank You, which has followed it. Although I blame myself for this rather than Simz, I suspect maybe a lack of consideration and first thought impulse was influencing the 2022 release after the gargantuan success of the 2021 masterpiece, though maybe it will sneak its way further into my brain and my heart. In any case, Little Simz has been shown a genius. If any album has deserved such laudatory accolades in the 2020s thus far, it certainly has been among a small sum of others. This one, 2021, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert.